Why, hello there, YouTube. We are back with another deck profile for you guys this week. This week, I wanted to focus a little bit on a deck that's going to be getting a lot of support this coming week as the video goes out, and that is Sakuyamon. TJ did put out a poll for our members, and he's been doing a great job at setting that poll up. And I know you folks had voted on, it looks like it was Black War this week, but we're going to bump that for a further week. So my apologies on this one, but I figured with the starter deck coming out, I figured, maybe we go over a list and talk about, one, the new pieces that we're getting, and also how a potential list will look. It's been a little bit since I played Sakuya, and I'm not going to claim to be like the expert on the deck by any means. So if you guys out there who have played Sakuya more than I have any tips or sort of suggestions on how your builds are looking like, please do drop them below in the comments. I would be very curious to see what you guys are cooking with. But yeah, no, I think this is going to be a very interesting time. Sakuya, before the ban list, was a super strong deck, as we all knew. It was hit for a reason. Both the Valder Arm limitation as well as the Digivolution plugin hit definitely slowed the deck down to a degree, but we've still been seeing some decent results with it. People just substituting it for more like consistency options and alternative top ends to good effect. So it was still a very strong deck, and now with this new starter deck, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of Sakuya again. So I'm going to highlight some of the new pieces that I think are very good for the deck. And, like I said, here is a starting skeleton for what my list is going to be looking like. I'm sure it'll be like evolving as we test a little bit more, but this is what I've settled on in my preliminary testing. So we'll start off with the Viximon egg here. Really strong, right? Basically has the inheritable of the limited plugin, which is a little bit silly. But basically reads, when you use option cards with the Omyojutsu or plugin trait, this Digimon may digivolve into a Digimon card with QB, Tau, or Sakuya in its name in the hand with a Digivolution cost reduced by 3. So super busted, right? Particularly when you pair that with the BT17 Talmon that allows you to use an option for free, as well as the new starter deck Talmon, which we'll talk about in a little bit, who also lets you use an option for free. So basically a built-in plugin S allowing you turbo into a Sakuyamon for free once you get into that level 5 is really good. What's really silly about this card as well is that if you push up a QB, use a plugin, a Digivolution plugin, you can go ahead and go into a Talmon, and you can go ahead and go into a Sakuyamon as well too. So really nutty combo there, allowing you to go from a level 4 all the way up into a level 6 for free is a little bit crazy. And this egg, I think, is really good. I don't think you run the old eggs by any means. This just definitely takes the cake, I think, on the best egg for the deck moving forward. Then for our Renamons, we kind of have the usual culprits here of BT17 Rena for search, and the inheritable to give check -1 is also pretty cheeky. And then you also have your EX2 Renamon, which allows you to basically gain a memory when you use an option card in your inheritable, which is really just helps make the deck super efficient. It's already super efficient, but why not give yourself another inheritable to gain memory is really good on top of it being a searcher. The new starter deck Renamon, and this is the pretty chase card version of it, I think it's very solid. Inheritable for barrier is really nice because now you're not too worried about your Sakuyamon getting kind of juiced in security by hitting a stronger Digimon or whatnot. Having barrier accessibility pairs also very nicely with a certain option card that we'll talk about in a quick second. But when moving and on play, which is a new, I don't think it's a brand new keyword, but it is something that we haven't seen a whole lot of before in the past. But you have the when moving, so from breeding to battle area or on play, you can trash a card in your hand and you can pick up an option card with the Omyojutsu or plugin trait from your trash to the hand. So basically, I think replaces the old Renamon X. I think Rena X is still a decent card in its own right, being able to just give you an extra like stack on top of the Rena to help you like cycle and search. Has a pretty decent inheritable too. I think it's -2k DP when you use an option card. So it's not a bad inheritable, but I think this Renamon is just much better because it allows you to do that when moving as well. So you don't necessarily have to rely on the when digivolving or like on play effect of Rena X as much. So I think Rena is just a little bit more of a fine-tuned Rena X, and I think it's, for me, it definitely substituted Rena X. So we run the 3-3-3 of the rookies, 9 total rookies, which for me has always been a little bit low, but I think for Sakuya is actually a bit on the higher end. So moving on to the level 4s, we do a split here. We only have 7, so we have 3 of the BT19 Cubimon. When you have 1 or fewer Tamers, you may play a Rika. Absolutely solid. Rika is so good for the deck. Either the new starter deck Rika or the BT19 Rika. Both are insane gas, so being able to play it off for free, really good. And inheritable to -2k DP when you use an option card. Cost of 2 or more is, again, very solid. Helps you get around some bodies, clear some lower end bodies, or just stack up your DP neg to get rid of a bigger body. But 4 of the new starter deck Cubimon, I think this card is insane, right? Being able to have both a when moving and when digivolving effect helps Sakuya become more of an OTK deck, as if it weren't already an OTK deck. And I guess a lot of times Sakuya, in its previous iteration, yes, it was still an OTK deck, but it was a deck that basically did a lot of damage, had a huge board that if you didn't deal with it, sort of like Jess does right now, right? Where if you don't deal with the board state, you lose. And I think Sakuya was that deck. Now Sakuya very much has the capability of just like going full send and just going through like 6-7 swings out the gate. But this Cubimon, giving yourself the when digivolving or when moving, allows you to safely evo into QB in the back, wait, and then push up to do search, which I think is absolutely busted for a deck that runs as funky ratios as Sakuya does. Being able to give yourself that extra level of like, you know what, layer of consistency by evoing QB, moving up, and like keeping your body safe and not having to risk it for the biscuit and evoing up front and gambaying a little bit, I think is huge. And when you do search, you reveal 3, you add a Rena, QB, Talmon, or Sakuya, so the whole entire line, or a Omyojutsu or plugin. So they did fine-tune it just a little bit. They reeled it in, right? Where they said, you know, you don't get the double hit, you get 1. So yeah, sure, it's not as busted as if it picked up both, but still a really good card nonetheless. Has the inheritable barrier. I think this is like, the way I'm looking at it, it almost is like Gauga, BT16 Galgamon vibes for Mirage, where that card was so busted that it definitely crept in the conversation of like limited status. This Cubimon, I think, depending on how Sakuya does, could definitely have make some murmurs kind of come up. It also being a 6k body gets around Ruin mode. Fun fact. Crazy. But moving on to the level 5s, we do 3-3 of the BT17 Tamon, which we all know and love by now, or hate. Being able to evo, use an option card for reduced cost of 2 is really good, and then when attacking, being able to spam out another option. Really crazy. But I do want to highlight the new Tamon that we get in the starter deck. I think a lot of lists before were running like 4 of the 17 Tamon and like maybe 1 or 2 of the Ace at most. But I think this Tamon is actually really solid, right? On play and on Evo, until your opponent's turn ends, one of their Digimon can't activate when Digivolving effects and gets -3k DP. Being able to give that no when Digivolving effects, I think, is huge. And then you may use one option card with the Ongyujutsu or plugin trait from your hand or under one of your Tamers without paying the cost as a when attacking effect. So again, if you go into this Talmon, swing, use an option card, you can then proc Viximon effect to go ahead and evo into Sakuya essentially for free, which is really strong. Has the inheritable of end of attack by trashing top security card, one of your Digimon with Sakuyamon and its name unsuspends. So the basic idea of this combo, right, is to go into Talmon, swing, play out an option card, whether it be any one of your plugins, or like the Amethyst Mandala, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Evo into Sakuyamon. Sakuyamon will go ahead and swing. We'll talk about her in a quick second, but be in mid of attack, use Alliance from a token card, do the 2 checks, end of attack, trash top security card with Talmon, restand, swing for 2 more checks. That's basically the combo there. And you haven't even layered in Sakuya X into that as well. So you can kind of see how nutty that can become. But I think this Talmon definitely warrants running in this deck, which is why I do the 3-3 split. Bumping up the level 5 count ever so slightly compared to the typical Sakuya build. And then doing that even split, because I think both are really solid. And I think in my testing, honestly, the more I use the starter deck Talmon, the more I'm like even considering like a 4-2 split with 4 starter deck and 2 of the old Talmon. So just because that extra swing with Alliance is crazy aggression, and with how fast the game is, sometimes you just, if you're doing the play, you just want to end it there and then. So I can definitely make a case to run this starter deck Talmon at a 4 of. But moving on to the level 6s, we will start with the Sakuya Ace. Really, really strong card here. On play on Evo when attacking, once per turn you play a Pipe Fox token, which is your 6k blocker. And then you can use one option card with the Omyojutsu plug-in trait from your hand or under one of your Tamers without paying a cost. Really, really good. That Alliance, I think, is huge for the aggression. Now, what is, I think, the saving grace to a degree, right, with this whole concept is that it is an ace. And with how prevalent de-digivolve is in the meta, whether it be out of security or if you can't complete the OTK play, you will get punished with Overflow 4. So I do think it's a little bit quote-unquote balanced in that regard, but I do think with the way that this deck is built now, you're basically going for it all with your combo play. I don't see a lot of world where like you float the Sakuya. I think it's still a very decent ace play. Like if you're stuck on the 5 and it's floated out there, your opponent has to respect it because your plugin cards are potentially very, very devastating for them. So they do have to respect the ace threat. And having a floating Talmon on board with the option card in security definitely is a very, very viable one. But I do think that the fact that it is an ace reels it in a little bit. I think if this were just a regular level 6, deck's gonna go real crazy. So having that ace potential penalty I think is good because it is a really, really strong card. I wanted to find room for 4th, but because I'm running one maid mode, I am running the ace at 3. Just because I did want a level 6 one that didn't have that ace overflow potential. And 2 of the level 6s that we had available to us, like BT19 or BT20 Sakuya was solid for playing on another blocker. You had the BT16 Sakuya, which again, DP negged and lets you play out an option card. Again, solid. But I think maid mode honestly synergized a lot more with the idea of like potentially OTKing, right? Because with maid mode, you can use an option card with plug-in and name, or yellow has a cost of 5 or less from hand without meeting its color requirements, and then you place that option card on top of your security stack, so it's like a pseudo recovery in a way. And then when attacking, you can evo into a Sakuyamon in hand for 1 memory. So if you think about it, you can go ahead and kind of do some crazy combo plays with like maid mode into another Sakuya. You can go maid mode into Sakuya X. Like it just helps you kind of like stack up multiple swings potentially, which I think can be pretty helpful. And it has that flexibility. Otherwise, I would probably run a 4th ace just because again, that combo play is pretty lethal. But one of maid mode I thought was solid. And then obviously we run 2 Sakuya X. Sakuya X is just the finisher, right? Being able to go into her, play out a token, swing, play option, restand, swing again, do 2 more checks, evoing by 1 is pretty crazy. So I think definitely your game finisher there with Sakuya X. As you can see here, we took out all level 7s because we are running a pretty solid option spread nowadays. So without Volderarm, your only really, I think, viable level 7 would have been like cards like Ruin Mode, which with the ace underneath it can be pretty taxing. So I don't think you run Ruin Mode nowadays. I think you just go for a more consistent option spread, which we'll talk about a quick second. But we do run a 3-2 split of the Rikas, 3 of the BT19 Rika for the search and memory gain when using options, and then 2 of the new starter deck Rika. Really strong card. Start a main phase, you can place an option card with Omyojutsu or plugin in its trait from your hand under this Tamer, and then you draw 1 and gain 1. So again, good for consistency and memory gain. I'm looking at it almost like that triple Tamer from Cross, right? Or like the new Tagiru or new Taiki, right? Where you just tuck, gain a memory, draw 1. Really, really nice. And then your turn, when your Digimon with Renamon, Cubimon, Talmon, or Sakuyamon in its name attacks, you can suspend the Tamer to use an option card with as high or lower use cost as that Digimon's level from under this tamer without paying the cost. Most of the option cards will be like 4 costs and below. Amethyst Mandala is a level or cost of 6, so you can use that even with your Sakuya plays. So pretty busted, right? Being able to just free cost options is like Sakuya on steroids now, right? So really strong card. If I can find a way to bump her up to like 3, I wish I could. But the list and the ratios are really tight. Sakuya just runs really funky lists or ratios in general. And I won't claim to have cracked it just yet. So if you guys have any tips, like I said, please do let me know. But this is sort of the spread I'm running with right now. And then to talk about our options, I still like one of the offensive plugin. Just because it's a very cheap way to just blow through your opponent's security, right? If you use this option card with like your Talmon or Sakuya Ace, like your alliance checks become not just like, they become 3, restand 3. You can blow through security, and then the Sakuya X just finishes the game there and then pretty easily. So I like this as like a sneaky way to just get some extra aggression in. The security effect also is not bad. Being able to cycle through and add a tamer is potentially risky, but not bad either. So I do like it as a one of. I've cut the Digivolution plugin completely just because I feel like you don't need it anymore with the Vixie. Like I said, this deck has become less of a push up, like a level 4 and work your way up. It's honestly like you can wait in the back and like you could even push up a Talmon and swing and start comboing off. Like you don't necessarily have to push up at like the level 3 to get things moving. You can really just start from building in the back and waiting for the right time. So I don't think this is a bad card to play, and I don't think cutting plugin, Digivolution plugin S is a bad call. And then we want to run one of the new offensive plugin 5. This is basically delete something with the lowest DP, so very akin to like Volcanapalm for the Howdy option. Then you add the card to hand out of security. Main phase, you go ahead and link to delete with as much or less DP as one of your Digimon. Again, pretty solid. The link effect, end of turn, you may attack. Again, helps you kind of pseudo blitz, depending on if you can, for example, Evo into Sakuya X, pass over that memory, but link the offensive plugin to just swing one last time, I think is really good. So I think it definitely warrants a spot. Some folks are doing 2 of this card and cutting the offensive plugin A completely. I think both have their viabilities, but I like both right now as a 1-1 split. High speed plugin H, I'm running at a 2 of. Security effect allows you to suspend, or not suspend, stun one of your opponent's Digimon or Tamers, and then you can add it to hand. And then main phase, you can go ahead and do the same thing, right? Basically link it to stun something. And then when you link it, the Digimon that you get linked to has jamming. So again, barrier, jamming. Sakuya is pretty much living through security outside of option cards at this rate. And I do like the fact that you buff up plus 2k DP as well. So gives you an extra DP to survive any sort of DP shenanigans and security. Gives you jamming. Gives you the choice to stun a tamer as well, which can come up in a lot of meta decks nowadays. So very solid card. And then the last plugin option that we are running here is 2 of the defense plugin F. The Digivolve 2 is just really strong. Even if it's only out of security, I think it's still worth it to run multiple copies of, because the Digivolve and DP Neg are still the 2 biggest ways of just combating decks in general nowadays that are still not necessarily like power crept out, and they're the strongest by far. So if you can have that potentially come out of security to Digivolve 2, really good. If it's a linked effect, you basically gain reboot and plus 3k DP. Gives the linked Digimon blocker, which sometimes having a big blocker out on the board is not a bad idea either. So again, I have it at a 2 of. I think if I test more and it comes out less, maybe I might do 1 of. But the fact that you get Digivolve 2 out of security is, I think, really strong and really good. And then the last option from the new starter deck is Amethyst Mandala. Really busted cards. It's a 6-cost option, so it can be played off of your Sakuya swings with the new starter deck Rika. Has the effect that reads, when effects trash this card from the security stack, you can activate its security effect, which reads, when any of your Digimon with Renamon, Kyubi, Tao, or Sakuya in their names would leave the battle area, other than by battle, by trashing this card, one of those Digimon does not leave. Very, very good. Very, very good. And then also one of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 9k DP for the turn. Very solid, right? So if you can imagine, if you activate this card and you trash it, yes, something doesn't leave and something gets to stick on the board, but something also on your opponent's side gets minus 9k DP. Very, very, very good option card. Main phase, draw one, then place it as the bottom security card. Does not have a limitation of how many you can stack, so you can stack multiple of this in some of my testing. It's honestly been a viable play where I'm like, you know what? Play it for 6, just tuck it under security, right? And then there's been times where I've had like 2 back-to-back. So if it gets hit out of security twice, you're bombing something 18k or bombing 2 different things 9k. So very, very strong there and can definitely trip people up coming out of security. And giving Sakuya pseudo protection I think could potentially be a mistake depending on the situation. But again, really, really strong card. I'm running it at a 3 of just so that I could fit in these other cards. And like I said, Sakuya's ratios are kind of all over the place. So I won't claim to have cracked all of it. But I think because you have such a slew of really, really good cards to use, your classical breakdown of like 10 rookies, 8 champions, and like, you know, so-and-so alt, like whatever, right? I don't think that is valid anymore. I think you definitely have to think a little bit out of the box. So this is what I've settled on, and it's felt pretty solid. Is there a world where I would want 4 of this card? I think it might be a little overkill, to be honest with you, as good as it is. I think 3 is good enough. Some people might even cut it down to 2. I don't know, but I think it's good enough where it warrants 3, but not like busted enough where I'm like, I need 4 of it, right? I think with the deck cycling enough too, you'll definitely see it if you run it at a 3 of, for sure. You know, and then to round out the rest of the deck, just to wrap up things here, right? We do 2 scramble, 3 boost, and 3 training. Boost and training just to find your pieces. I think the deck is a lot more consistent now with the new Cubimon and the new Rika, so you have some added consistency there where you can cut back on your trainings and your boosts. The Rika still searches as well, so you do have different modalities of finding your pieces. So I do think there is room to cut back on those 2 consistency options. The scramble is where I'm a little bit on the fence about, mainly because, again, if I could run it at like 3 or 4, I feel like the natural gut instinct is to do so. But you have Viximon now, which replaces the Digivolution plugin S. You have multiple ways of just like gaining so much memory efficiency with this deck that I don't feel like you necessarily need 4. If there was a reason to bump up the scramble, I think it would be to find your pieces, right? Because say like 2 Sakuya X's are hit out of security and you're like, I needed that to go for game. Having a scramble live would be helpful, but I just don't see a world where like you need 4. Personally, right? Like if I were to do 4, I think I would start cutting back on like the level 4 count or like the option count, right? Which at that point I'm like, I'm sacrificing consistency to add in like pseudo consistency. So I'd much rather just see the pieces and the lines that I need to go full combo. And I still think 2 scramble is viable enough where like it can still come up, right? But at the same time, it's not as mandatory as it was before, at least in my opinion. Particularly with this new Viximon. So yeah, this is the list. Definitely, like I said, if you guys have any thoughts or feedback, do let me know. I think Sakuya is going to make a return in a pretty emphatic way moving forward. Granted, after the starter deck comes out, we're not really going to have a whole lot of events. I think there's that one regional next weekend. Shout out to the crew over in Orlando at Versus Games. I think potentially Risu as well, who's going to be working the event. It's, I think, our last big event before Cardfest in February. So it's going to be hard to tell like whether there's going to be actual like topping results from this list. A lot of it's going to be coming out from like local results, webcam results. Like, for example, Eagle's Nest is going to be, I think, one of our very, very consistent pieces of like or places where we can find meta results. So shout out Eagle and his crew for hosting a great weekly competition. But it's going to be curious to see how the meta shapes out in general, you know, moving into Cardfest. But I do think Sakuya is going to be one of those decks to watch out for, and definitely one of those decks that's going to be making waves as it comes out this week. So definitely let me know what you guys think. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the profile. Like I said to our members, thank you once again. We appreciate every one of you. And don't forget to vote members on next week deck profile. If you want to become a member, we've got instructions on how to do so down in the video description below. So do check that out. And thank you all for tuning in. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.